Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Enough to Keep Going podcast, episode number 7. I'm your host, Osiris Prime. Tonight, we have a couple other co-hosts. DBQ Hams is off tonight. He's on assignment for his work, not for us. It's okay. Tonight, we have Zeus Adamus. Zeus, how you doing? Thought I'd do you first.
I am monster double-fisted.
Oh, man. I was about to say, you're going to be wired tonight. And also with us is Swiss #1 guard, as he has his red shirt on there.
Awesome. Good evening, everyone. This is the captain insignia.
Oh, okay.
Gotta
Swiss
just
card. Well, I don't know what captain you prefer. So, although that is the generation shirt, I believe.
Picard.
Well, that's the whole problem. That's the true definition of a generational shift. Is the people who, I mean, the red shirt joke is kind of funny, but then there are all the people who don't realize that red shirts in the next generation are actually the ones in command. So, I generally leave that one alone.
They flipped the switch on that one. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is our nerd moment for the episode, at least the first one. We'll see what happens later on. But so tonight we will go through our playlists. But first, we're going to talk about our topic of the week. And we're going to talk about kind of the way games kind of come and go, I guess you could say. Are there any game genres out there that are kind of fading away into obscurity, or just kind of maybe falling away to the wayside? You know, there hasn't been maybe too much action in there, or too much notoriety lately. But I'm gonna throw this over to Swiss so he can speak up a little bit more and get us started on this.
Yeah, my oldest daughter, she's not a huge gamer. If I introduce her to a game and she enjoys it, she'll keep playing and she'll seek it out on her own and ask for time to play. But she's not really one to research games on her own. But there was one game that I bought for her on Steam that she kind of took to, and one that I had played a lot of a long time ago, which was Age of Empires 2. And Steam, some years back, re-released it in HD. And she enjoyed it. She's not, cutthroat in it or anything. She just kind of enjoys having the town building aspect, and she will go attack, but she enjoys the whole gamut of the game. And I was looking to see if there was some other games I can introduce her to, real-time strategy games. And I was just looking through the Steam store, and there really hasn't been much coming out in that real-time strategy vein, other than, I guess, recently StarCraft 2. But a lot of this stuff, if it has come out, has been smaller indie titles. I don't see any of these flagship franchises. And you look in the past, you had Age of Empires, you had Command and Conquer, Rise of Nations, and then StarCraft. I mean, even now, it's not like that's super recent. I don't quite remember when Legacy of the Void came out, but it got me thinking about these franchises and these game genres that I know we've all played a lot of and just seem to have faded a bit into obscurity. So I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on that. Did for some of these genres, like the RTS, is demand dried up? Is it something that can make a comeback? I know there are some genres, I think, that kind of went away and have returned. But or have they simply evolved into new forms? So nowadays we don't have so much Age of Empires like real-time strategy, but a lot of people are playing Defense of the Ancients, and a lot of people are playing. Is that kind of a modern equivalent of a real-time strategy game? So I just was kind of curious to you guys' thoughts on the state of the game industry, as it were, as far as title classification.
Well, I never even heard of that last game you just said, so that might kind of tell you right there. As far as RTS, I used to play them a lot back on when I was a PC gamer. I was playing Command and Conquer all the time, Red Alert, mostly Red Alert 2, and kind of Beyond a little bit. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of genres. You have one here on here, Flight Sims. I mean, that's all but pretty much disappeared. I know what Microsoft had the kind of the more popular one, I suppose.
Flight Simulator.
Yeah.
I had a lot of trouble a few Christmases back because my dad was in the military. He was in Air Force, and I wanted to find him a flight combat simulator, and it was difficult to find a modern flight combat simulator, and a lot of them are just kind of supported at this point by the mod community. But yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. Like I said, I mean, you really can't find pretty much anything, at least as far as those two, at least those first two, the RTS and the flight sims. I know the one, I guess, kind of big one you can say, RTS is Halo Wars 2, and I don't know if that came out on the PC or not. I think it did, maybe, sort of. I don't know.
It's definitely out on PC.
It is on PC. Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure, but I mean, other than that one, yeah, I mean, most of those other ones you rattled off was, I mean, they're pretty much, there hasn't been anything new really on them lately. Zeus, what do you think?
So, well, I guess we're marching down the list. So,
yeah, you can keep going if you want to keep going toward those other genres.
So, yeah, otherwise it'll be like a 10-minute discussion topic.
Like, you're right, and done.
So RTSs are a weird one, and I've been talking about the RTS drought for a few years. And this is the case in most of the genres, and maybe we could talk about the franchises that are in here. In a lot of cases, each of these genres has dried up, and there's been a lot of industry consolidation. And there are, like Swiss mentioned, outside of some indie games, it's kind of where there's one to three like really big name franchises, and that's kind of become all there's room for in the industry. So for RTSs, you still have we just talked about it a few shows back, actually, on E2KG and 30, Creative Assembly's Total War series, and that's huge, right? And people really love it. I'm sorry, go ahead, Prime.
No, I was just agreeing with you. Yeah, I totally forgot about that one. Yep.
Yeah. So, but outside of that, there's not, in my opinion, there's not a lot. Now, I brought this topic up one time on Casual Adult Gamers, and somebody disagreed with me and said, "Oh no, there's this franchise and that franchise and this franchise," and I'm like, "Yeah, but those are really small sales numbers, and like nobody cares about them when they come out. Like the fact that they're being published doesn't mean that the genre hasn't dried up, right?" So, but yeah, it's kind of weird, I guess. StarCraft continues to be big, and it's kind of the big thing in esports. I agree with Swiss a little bit that in a lot of cases, the 21st century version of RTSs has kind of become MOBAs. That those have kind of sucked up a lot of that energy and room. But yeah, there's not a lot, and in comparison to the heydays, right? When there was everybody was making RTSs. There was Command and Conquer. There was Total Annihilation. At the tail end of that heyday, you had is it Warhammer 40,000, Warhammer 40K.
I think they still make those every so often, every few years though. It takes a while.
Yeah, they do. And Warhammer 40,000 Dawn of War, the first one, kind of came in just on the tail end of like Warcraft 3, I want to say. So yeah, they're still being made, but they're in very small numbers. And like I said, I think MOBAs have taken a lot of the energy out of that space.
So you had mentioned maybe kind of an evolution, like you mentioned the MOBAs, but another, I guess, and I forgot what the genre is called now, but games like Defense Grid, where it's more like you're fortifying your base.
Yeah, tower defense games.
Tower defense. Thank you. I couldn't think of what it was called. So I mean, that could kind of go that way maybe, because you're just on one central location instead of just kind of all over a map. So I don't know. I just kind of threw that out there.
It can, and at the risk of bleeding into a topic that you kind of posted for another time, Swiss, which we could definitely get into and keep for a later topic, but I think it's worthwhile mentioning some of the tangential relations here in terms of maybe one reason people went away from RTS is, well, I pitched two things. One, RTSs are kind of hard. certain people really acclimate to them. From a game design perspective, maybe they reach their. I feel like we're talking about the dinosaurs, right? And hypothesizing why each of these things may have gone extinct. But in the case of RTSs, they with Company of Heroes, maybe. Which was the last, in my opinion, like really great RTS in a big commercial sense. Maybe they reached the apogee of what you could do with that design for that time, right? They had gotten to be so much of a click fest and so much of a Zerg rush. And even though things have made comebacks, right? Age of Empires has made a comeback to a certain extent. Homeworld made a big comeback a couple of years ago. With the remaster, which I played and Gray and I played a couple times together, and we absolutely love. But I think it's a case of the specific slice of design they were in. They had kind of reached the maximum extent of their design that was feasible, and I feel like that's why we've gotten some of these riffs on RTSs that have been, like you mentioned, tower defense, which I feel like have kind of come and reached their apogee and are now on the wane. But definitely MOBAs.
Yeah, and then some more here you have on the list. I want to actually jump over the adventure games just for now, just because I got a thought. But the turn-based, you have squad tactic or base tactic games, but just kind of turn-based games in general. You don't really see too much on the consoles anymore, or the PC. But I think that's the kind of games that maybe have moved on to another platform. Like you see a lot of those on mobile. So let me see. I was going to have one right here, and I forgot what it was. Well, you see some fun. I think Final Fantasy might have had one like that or so. There's the one.
Talking about the turn-based tactical, or like just the turn-based strategy and tower defense games?
Yeah, like just turn-based tactical. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know a big one that I'm a huge fan of. Again, it's not turn-based, but tower defense kind of feels turn-based. It's like this faux turn-based almost, but. One of my favorite ones is Field Runners, which is available on iOS and Android. And probably my second favorite one, which is a turn-based strategy game and plays wonderfully, is it's a great little war game. Great little war game too for anybody who's I've played those. Those are awesome. But they're on mobile. The other thing I was going to mention it because you were touching on it again, Prime, and I forgot. I feel like maybe part of it is the rise of the preeminence of the console, right? And I'm sure we're going to get loads of hate mail for this, but
PC Master Race.
There's this whole argument that PC has resurged and that the numbers are comparative, and yeah, sure, I'll agree with that. I mean, you see, a gaming PC right here over this shoulder that I built, last year because I felt like PC was back. But the fact of the matter is that what's in the public zeitgeist, right, what the whole news track is all about consoles. And the fact of the matter is that RTSs don't play well on consoles, right? They've gotten them to work, but it's the best they can do. I would say that there are some RTSs that play fine on consoles. I wouldn't say that there's any RTSs that play well, and I wouldn't say there are any RTSs that, given the option to play on console or PC, that would not be better on PC. And so, PC developers, I mean, console developers are definitely not going to sink time into RTSs.
No, but you have some major publishers that aren't afraid to release PC-only titles. I mean, it's just, I kind of felt like you're... the creative juices for the genre being used up might be a good reason why RTSs in particular have faded. It's kind of hard for me to picture other than the superficial level, what kind of units, what kind of realm we're in. But then again, a lot of, I guess for RPGs, you have a lot more flexibility with regards to the battle system for evolution and whatnot. I could see how we could have reached an endpoint for RTS and just need it to take a breather for a while until it seems fresh to a new generation, as it were.
Yeah, and I'd like to continue. I'd like to continue tracking down this path and just kind of see if it shakes out, right? So flight sims, right? Flight sims don't play that great on consoles. Flight games play fine. Ace Combat, Tom Clancy's Hawks, although that was a bit of a maligned game. But, nobody's really made like a Falcon 4.0 or what is it called? DCS. I took Steam off this machine, but there's the one really big flight sim. I mean, people still play IL-2 Sturmovik too. I mean, I still play that. But you're right. There's no Microsoft. You guys mentioned Microsoft Flight Simulator. There was probably a lot of people don't remember. There was a Microsoft Flight Combat Simulator, which was a variant. Yeah. So that played awesome. But you don't really have that deep sim experience on consoles. I believe because that audience isn't there who wants to kind of do what it's akin to what Forza players do in Forza, right? Getting under the hood and tinkering and going kind of crazy. That's the analog for that demographic of gamer on PC are the people who like to get a flight control system, right? That costs $300 to $600 with a separate throttle and stick assembly, but they can dive deep on the control set. And the only thing that really does that today that I can think of off the top of my head is I think it's called DCS Flight Combat Simulator, Digital Combat Simulator, and it's like it's I don't know how to want to say it. You buy the core game, and then you buy all these discrete plugins that come in packs of like 1 to 3 additional aircraft, and then you kind of assemble your whole master flight simulator by piecemealing together these individual kind of plugins. But again, that's a genre that doesn't go but so deep on consoles, and that might be why it has fallen out of favor.
It'd be interesting to see if it ever happens, if VR truly takes off, if that introduces console gamers to new experiences, and a flight simulator in VR to me could make sense. Get a joystick peripheral bundle with the game, and you get to look around and see your cockpit, and I can see that maybe capturing some attention for a few minutes for some people.
Or even to a certain extent, you don't really need that peripheral, right? If you have the VR set and the controllers, you can mimic the feel of them reaching out to use a hotness system or flipping switches, right? Which is really this, I don't know what you call it. It's some kind of stimuli, right? That feeling of flipping a bunch of switches on a control system, it tickles people's whatever, cerebral cortex or whatever part of the brain that releases not serotonin, or something, whatever.
Endorphins,
yes, yeah, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I've said I'm not on the VR train, but when I do look at it, the things that attract me to VR are the fact that Project Cars has VR, right? And I think it definitely hooks into the new resurgence in space sims, right? So Elite Dangerous, I believe, has VR compatibility, and I'm sure that that's part of the hook of what's keeping people engaged. Yeah, Prime, when you've played with Gray, has he been wearing his Rift to play?
No, when we were playing, he didn't have the Rift yet, so I'm not even sure. No, I was playing on console anyways, so I was playing on Xbox, so I wouldn't have been able to play with him with the Rift anyways. Yeah, but on the note of Sims though, and I guess this is kind of an asterisk subject here because you had racing Sims on there, but that's I guess kind of been around more or less only because I guess consoles have kind of kept that alive, and more so Xbox, well even PS4 too. You get your favorite game there, Zeus. I forgot what it's called on PlayStation. The big racing game.
Gran Turismo.
Gran Turismo, yeah. This comes out every decade or so. But then you have like a Forza, and Project Cars, has come up last few years. They had one come out, 2-3 years ago? I think it was probably 2 years ago. Now they got the second one coming out soon. So it's kind of made a resurgence coming back. Yeah,
and that's a space where actually could, there's not as much of a input device deficit there, right? So racing games play fine, are even well with a game controller. And getting a wheel and pedals hooked up to play on a console is sometimes a pain because most people don't have their console sitting on a desk, right? They have them on an entertainment stand, and therefore they have no table like in front of them or desk to clamp the wheel and pedals to. But game controller input has certainly been very competent. So maybe that's why racing games have become one of the stock solid genres for consoles, and yeah, I've kept that alive. But again, like you look at it, like how many great racing games have come out on PC, right? Because most of them, the big titles that we can think of, right, are mostly on console. Project Cars crosses PC and console. Assetto Corsa crosses PC and console, but really only did well on PC.
I forgot about that one.
Yeah, but most of those racing, I mean, I don't know that even. Well, I guess Need for Speed has still been coming out for PC, but it's just now that we're hitting a point where Microsoft is releasing those Forza games for both a PC and console.
Yeah, I'm not a huge racing aficionado, so when I think of the major sim racing franchises, my mind immediately goes to the major console franchises. I don't really even think too much about racing on PC, which I suppose might be a shame because I might be overlooking quite a bit. But yeah, I think that's definitely for the public at large. You got Gran Turismo and Forza, and
Yeah, just to bring it back, because I myself got a little off track because I was talking and I was like, where the heck does this relate back to genres that have died out again? So the reason I put this on the list was because there was a time where hardcore racing sims kind of on the PC kind of faded out, right? And all we were getting were arcadey kind of racing sims. So we were still getting Need for Speed. But back in the early 2000s, there was this great game, I didn't necessarily think it was a great game, but it was very popular, which was Grand Prix, I think was just the name of it. And it was a long-running franchise and highly technical. Like, it was difficult to even get the car out of the pits. But those type of games, again, really had a very high learning curve. And as I feel like as consoles came on the rise, in the days before we had something hardcore like a Forza, the emphasis, again, started to shift from PC to console, and so we didn't see those games on PC. And like I said, now we're just getting back to where we see kind of labors of love like Project Cars and Assetto Corsa and Forza showing up on PC.
Yeah, so a couple of more genres you had in kind of in that vein where they kind of disappeared and came back. You had adventure games and first-person shooters, which you might have to explain that one a little bit more. First-person shooters.
Yeah, so again, that's kind of a PC-centric view, right? So between Half-Life and Halo, we kind of had. So we had a period of time where shooters were all the rage, and when Half-Life came along, it kind of focused on story-based shooters. But then things switched, but really after Half-Life, there was a period of time where we had a lot of story-based shooters, and you had Soldier of Fortune, you had Raven come to the fore to do first-person shooters, but then things kind of became, you had Unreal, but things really started to hyper-focus on multiplayer. And you had Unreal Tournament come out, and you had Quake 3 Arena come out. And for a long time, we got things like Prey. But like when Prey came out, I guess shortly after Half-Life 2. But my point is, there was a very quick effort to capitalize on story-based shooters, and then that bubble just kind of burst. And then it all went multiplayer. So there was a period of time where, again, we had some big multiplayer franchises with Unreal Tournament. But other than that, we really didn't get a ton of first-person shooters on PC. And I can remember years where I just kept playing the same first-person shooters over and over and over again. And it really wasn't until and people got tired. I think the market for first-person shooters got saturated on PC a few years before Halo came out, and then we got oversaturated with World War II shooters as well. And then Halo came out and proved that you could do shooters well on console. And again, the pendulum started to swing. It didn't swing very heavily in console generation 6 on the Xbox and the PlayStation 2, but definitely by 7, where multiplayer took off on the Xbox 360, and you really started hitting some big drum beats with Call of Duty. But again, those things were coming out for console, and they weren't always necessarily being ported to PC. So I feel that the PC has definitely been enjoying a first-person shooter renaissance, but I would say mostly through the period of console generation 7, that wasn't equally reflected on the PC. And so I feel like as a big genre on PC, first-person shooters definitely fell out of favor, and we're not as big a genre on PC for a period of time. I think we're just starting to get that back now.
Yeah, you're right. Because around that time with like Half-Life and well, before Halo, I wasn't really doing PC gaming, shooting PC gaming, so I didn't really recognize those games at that point. I was, like I said, I was doing RTSs and stuff like that, not turn-based, third-person games like Jedi Academy and those kind of types of games. So I totally forgot about that kind of period on PC. And then you mentioned adventure games, and I think you had mentioned like I was gonna say Oddworld, not Oddworld. What was that game? Homeworld? Is that the one you were talking about? No, not Homeworld.
That's an RTS. Yeah.
I can't remember the name. Well, games like Flashback and stuff like that. I forgot what the game you had mentioned.
Journey.
I think that's what you're talking about. Okay.
Was one. Then there was.
So adventure games to me, I identify that genre with games like Myst, and what was the follow-up to Myst? Riven?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
Something. But they were these. And really, if you go even further back, we're talking about games like King's Quest and Space Quest. These, you walk in a room, you observe a bunch of stuff, you pull a lever. They're just puzzle-based games, right? Basically. And there's not a lot of like real-time events in them. Sometimes you get sort of kind of faux quick-time events, but yeah, those definitely went away and just stopped being made. I want to say like in the early 2000s, so 2003-ish. But I kind of feel like this resurgence of indie games, which lend themselves well to the adventure genre, has kind of been part of the resurgence of those games.
So would you say stuff like Firewatch is kind of an evolution of those games? Because it's you kind of, obviously it's the 3D space and you can walk around freely, well, more or less freely, but it's pretty much just like a puzzle. You're going doing a puzzle, trying to figure out what's going on and stuff like that. Or Numia, the game I was playing a few months ago, stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess the first major thing that I think of in the resurgence of adventure games is called The Longest Journey.
I don't.
And didn't it have a sequel or something? I thought it was like a PlayStation 2 game or something like that.
No, I don't remember that one.
So is everybody fact checking?
Point and click adventure.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, that released in 2000. Okay.
Okay, so no, I guess maybe that was the last of the big ones then for a long time.
They re-released it on iOS in 2014.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like technology is the way you envision it. The adventure games, technology's really been the driver. So back with Myst and whatnot, you didn't have a ton of horsepower in your computer, and so the developers kind of worked around that restriction. And when you mentioned indie being the resurgence, like, to me, that struck me as, well, the technology, the hardware is no longer the restriction, but with an indie team, you can only do so much in order to get your game out in 18 months. So that's kind of an interesting thought, that the ability to develop adventure games are kind of a genre built upon restrictions there. That's kind of an interesting perspective, I think. But it makes sense too.
Yeah, I mean, definitely if you think about it, like another subgenre, right, is the shmup, right? And like you mentioned, Swiss, it's a lot. Some of that has to do with just the fact that as game development, as you were attempting to goad me into a few days ago, game development is it's become more and more democratized, right? Just like other other things around technology have been. More power has been put into more people's hands that allow them to be creative, right? It's what allows us to do this podcast, right? And so and so that has a bearing in terms of games that have kind of a small technology footprint and people's ability to bring them to market. So that might have a lot to do with some of these genres that we've seen kind of surface back to the top.
And there's good experiences. I don't mean to belittle or anything like that. It's just you work with what you got, and a talented storyteller can make a great game, and they don't need a tens of $1 million budget to do it. You're not going to be able to do an MMORPG with that, but you certainly can do an adventure game. One of you put Zeus mentioned indie games on our agenda, so I'm guessing that you intended that to be, we kind of had an indie gold rush, and that seems to maybe be fading now.
Yeah, that was my thought, and I hate to use this term because Alana, I can't remember her last name, but she's the Australian young lady on I think Podcast Beyond and Podcast Unlocked now.
Yeah, Pierce, I think is her last name.
Yeah, utilized this phrase in a recent episode. I will say I have been using this phrase for several years before she mentioned it. But of course, nobody listens to me, but people definitely listen to her. Yeah, I mean, my feeling a couple of years ago, actually, I think we were doing, it was back when I was doing the regular Joe Gamer podcast. One of the things I mentioned is my problem with indies is there was a time, I won't say this is the case now, and I won't say that this applies to everyone. It was just my feeling at the time. So this was the big year of indies, right? Probably when PlayStation 4 came out, and there was a large conversation around how that was such a supporting platform for indie developers. And you had, gosh, what was the game? It was when Don't Starve came out, and what was the indie game where you were in Russia or something that was supposed to be Russia, and you were trying to get across the border or something like that. You had to show like your pass and papers every morning.
It doesn't sound familiar. I can look it up though.
Okay, so that was one of the biggest titles that year. But there was some of the community who was very vocal and supporting of indies. The whole thing just became very pretentious, and it was like the more we have this in other genres, right? And this is one of the textbook examples of how the gaming industry and the gaming culture and gaming society is immature. Not meaning childish, but meaning we're seeing things occur in gaming culture that have passed before in music and TV and movies, right? So in music and in movies, we have this sect of people who, the more off kilter and out of skew from the mainstream a thing is, the more they support it, right? And it's not always necessarily because that content is good or interesting. It's just because it's not mainstream, right?
There's if you have you ever seen the TV show IT Crowd? Roy has a T-shirt. Nothing is any good if other people like it.
Well, right, and I have a little bit. I I don't go after things like that because people don't. But I definitely hesitate about falling into a belief that something is good when everybody loves it. Like if a movie comes out and everybody loves it, and I'm not certain about it, it doesn't already have a hook or something that I like, I'm skeptical of it before I go in, right? Same thing with games, right? A lot of times when games are just super overly popular, I'm like, I don't know if I'm buying that. But but I don't, you know, but I don't deliberately go after or popularize non-mainstream music just because it's not mainstream, right? Um, either edge of that extreme is bad. But I feel like that's what happened that year, 2014. I'm pretty sure is the year I'm talking about, where I mean, I was friends. I am friends with lots of gamers who during that time period were like, I'm not buying AAA games, right? Like AAA, but then it became too extremist, right? It became all AAA games suck. And I'm like, how can you say that, right? I'm like I'm not playing anything and nothing's worthwhile unless it's indie. And I'm like, you look, I listen to pop music, right? I like people say, bands that don't play their own instruments aren't worth anything, and I'm like, Beethoven didn't play his own instrument, right? Mozart didn't play his own instrument. I mean, just sure they were musicians, but the things that they were famous for were not things that they actually played, right? So I kind of don't get it. Opera singers and other singers like don't play their own instruments, so this rabid distaste for anybody who just sings. Like I don't understand that, or like sings but doesn't write their own songs. I'm like a song. I find a song either appealing or I don't. I don't care who wrote it, right? And I feel the same way about games. Games are either good to me or I don't like them. It doesn't matter if they're indie or not indie. So my point of the reason I put that on there is I feel like I want to say that game was called the Stanley Parable.
Oh, the one you're thinking. There's one called Papers, Please.
Yes, so that was what the two big ones that year I think were Papers, Please and the Stanley Parable.
Okay.
And the Stanley Parable was the one where like you went to work. The whole game was like 10 or 15 minutes, and you went to work and you experienced like a day at work and everybody disappeared and you had to figure out like you had to get to an ending. And I wouldn't even necessarily say it was you had to figure anything out. But indie games during that time period to me were pretentious, and I played Papers, Please. I played the Stanley Parable, but shortly after that, I was like, I'm sorry, and maybe we'll probably talk about this when we go through my game list. Like, I'm sorry if you don't put the objective of the game like right in my face. Like, I'm just not interested. Like, I enjoy playing games for the strategy and the tactics. I don't enjoy games for the esoteric. Existential experience, right? So I felt like too many games went after that, and I wasn't interested in that. And you're right, and I think so. I think a lot of people came to feel that way afterwards, and that's why we saw a dip in the popularization of indie games. It hasn't gone away as a genre, but something happened to it on PC where it's not a thing anymore. Like games are just games. We still talk about indies on consoles, but I really feel like on PC we're back to just talking about games.
I think it's probably not a good thing that we consider indie a genre at all. I mean, I just, like you said, games are games, and using the word pretentious, I can see that, because when you have websites and whatnot advocating the indie quote lifestyle, just make a quality real-time strategy game, make a quality adventure game, and let your work speak for yourself. So we're kind of a little bit farther away from lost genres here with our criticism of indie hipsters, but
I actually think we're spot on, right? Because here's my thing: I didn't call indie games a genre. I'm not the one who started that, right?
Okay, true.
But there was a dialogue around trying to slice that thing off as a thing in and of itself and separate and discrete, right? So,
well, I mean, Steam still does. So,
oh, yeah.
so
I mean, I think it's really more of a broader term because obviously you have an indie game, you could have all these other genres in a racing game or RTS or action adventure or shooter or whatever. So I mean, but people do just kind of clump it all together and you say, hey, here's an indie game. Doesn't matter what it is. So
Yeah, I think
weird.
I feel like Steam has rolled back, like most of us have, talking about that as far as who published the game. I feel like we've backed off of the um, religious extremism that was trying to say that was a genre in and of itself, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you see that a lot more on the consoles now with actually indie. There's like an indie section. So, and even that's not too bad anymore. Like now that we're on the Xbox One and PS4, I think they've kind of clumped it together. Even though I guess a lot of people kind of hate that because they want to have it like parsed out and so say this
Right.
is just the indie and this is just shooter and so on and so on.
Well, now that the PlayStation 4 actually has a games library and like 70% of it isn't just indie game titles because they didn't publish any exclusives for like the first 2 years of that console's life cycle that were of any significance.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say something, but you know what? That's a discussion for another time. I was gonna say it kind of flipped now because now Xbox was kind of slowing down on exclusives, and
Right.
PS4 is
Right.
kind of jumping up now. But anyways, so just kind of a few last words here. So yeah, obviously none of these genres have obviously totally disappeared. They're still out there in some form or another, and I think it's all kind of cyclical where, the stuff just kind of comes up to the top or to the front and then, it gets, shot back down when if you want to say it's too popular, if it just gets it's too much stuff out there.
I held on to the hope that it was cyclical for flight sims for 15 years, and it's not cyclical.
Well, you never know.
At least that one hasn't been. I've seriously, like, every year I've said this is the year flight sims comes back, and they haven't come back.
Well, I guess you mentioned the flight sims. You're right because there really isn't any kind of flight sims. You kind of see that here and there, but obviously it's more smaller titles. But is there a genre out there that's like you don't see anything like at all anymore that you can think of that you guys can think of other than flight sims?
I think your theory is correct. I think flight sims is this weird aberration where they're just not coming back for some reason. But by and large, for most of these others, I agree that for the most case, they go away and then they come back with a video. I mean, shooters have never been as big as they were last year on consoles. So there were, again, same thing, right? We went through years where there was kind of just Call of Duty and Battlefield, I guess. And of course, Battlefield wasn't story based, right? But now we've arrived at this nadir where we have big first person shooter franchises, and I want to say all of them are bringing first the single player story driven experience back. Right, Titanfall 2 had a story this time.
Yep. Battlefront 2 is going to have a story now. Yep.
Right. I mean, yeah, Battlefront 2 is having a story. Battlefield brought a story back last year or so. Yeah.
Swiss, any comments there? Anything you can think of that's kind of gone away almost altogether?
I was about to say text-based adventure games. But I'm sure there's a bunch of indie titles out there that utilize that. Actually, there was one indie title where you're like on a space station and you could only communicate with the AI through the text, which I thought was a really cool concept.
It's kind of cool, yeah.
But no, one of the things we didn't really get to was turn-based, squad-based tactics games, but I feel like that's getting a resurgence now. I mean, who would have thought that we'd have a Mario XCOM coming out? So, that's good because I like those games. Thinking about it from a technological perspective is an interesting. I didn't really consider the PC console tug of war as a driver for some of these genres drying up, because I kind of just figured the PC's there, we can make PC games. So good conversation. Prime, it looks like you dug into the Nintendo Switch this week now that you got your hands on one.
I finally did. Can you believe it? I did not touch my Xbox all week. The whole week.
Hold on, did Swiss just segue the segwayer?
He did. He's a fast learner, way quicker than I am. He's learning quick. So yeah. So I've played a lot of Switch, which I only have 2 games. So I've been playing a lot of Splatoon 2 and Zelda Breath of the Wild. In Splatoon 2, I didn't realize it's not local. You can't play local multiplayer, which kind of stinks. It's only online multiplayer.
Wait, I thought you could set up a local like for Boston land to play.
Not on one machine at least, or one like TV, I guess, because I only have one Switch. But if you have multiple Switches, you can. Yeah.
I guess they must have. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was gonna say I guess they took that feature out because there was a 1 versus 1 feature in the original Splatoon on the Wii U.
Oh, was it? Okay, that's what I thought. I thought I had read that somewhere.
So this is split screen we're talking about. It won't do split screen.
Yeah, I never really got that because you needed to basically have a Wii U Pro controller to do it because one person would be on the Wii Pad, one person would have the Pro controller, and I just never bought one. So
nice. Yeah, so I was kind of bummed about that, but because I want to kind of play with my kid, but he can just he's having fun playing it by himself too. He's been playing it over the weekend a couple times. So just through the story mode. I don't know if I'm going to have him. Well, I guess I could probably have him jump online and fight real people since you have to use the mobile phone to to talk with anybody. Which I have my thoughts on later. Maybe we'll see.
So have you used that?
No, I haven't tried it yet. I haven't even tried it.
Okay. No. So your sigh of exasperation was just based off of the sheer energy needed to.
That's right.
So I have a theory. Now, I will admit, and I think we mentioned this on another similar topic. So I have a potentially skewed view from my large amount of time, I guess, relatively speaking. Sometimes I forget. But I guess I've spent a large amount of time streaming and game capturing over the last year and a half. With 270 videos on my YouTube channel, right? Not all of those successful. Some of those have been experiments that did not go well. But so because I go through this religious ritual, right, every week, literally every week, of hooking the streaming equipment up to like a given gaming system, capturing some video, breaking it all down, and then usually about the weekend. I go back to it, right? So I'm constantly going through all these gyrations. So, and a lot of times for my audio feed, right, I have to do something very akin to hooking up that phone in between, right? I have to, when I use my hardware mixer, I have to put that in between myself and the console and myself and the streaming PC. Or sometimes I have to connect some other device. Sometimes I have to use analog pass-through on sound with card if the display I'm hooked up to doesn't have an audio output. So I guess part of, and I'm talking myself into it, right? I guess my perspective is skewed because I don't really feel like this is hooking up a phone in between is that big a deal. Is my perspective just skewed? Like,
well, probably because I don't go through all that every week. So I just want to. Normally, when I play a game, like even if I'm just playing the Xbox, I have my controller and I'm playing late at night, so I don't want to wake up my family. So I'll throw in just a headset, just plug it right to the controller, and I'm good to go. This I have to turn on the phone. I think you even have to have the phone on maybe all the time. I'm not sure about that yet. Don't quote me when you're doing it for the Nintendo.
That's probably right. I mean, if you've got chat, does text chat show up on the app?
I'm gonna assume. Like I said, I haven't tried it yet. So, if you have to have the phone on all the time, that's obviously gonna drain your battery. So then I have to find somewhere where I can sit and plug it in, and it just seems a little bit more of a hassle, just because I'm not used to it. Like for you, yeah, you probably won't mind it too much because you always have that set up. So, I don't know, Swiss, have you tried it, or do you even gonna try it?
Right now, I'm probably not too concerned with trying it just because I don't mind not talking to the other Splatoon players. And my son is a huge Splatoon fan. That was his birthday party theme this year. So
Nice.
he was really into it, and I don't really want him. I don't mind him playing online, but I definitely don't want him conversing with folks online. Just you really trying to be kind of a good dad. I don't know. But as far as the using the phone as the mechanism, I just wonder if that's a means of making it palatable for a wider audience. So, Nintendo's going to appeal to a lot more casual players, and getting online, moms are probably going to feel more comfortable with maybe just plugging some headphones into a phone or just downloading the little app than they are going to be buying, a pair of $100 Turtle Beach, whatever, So I don't know if that's a great justification for it. The other justification I think they're putting out there is they want it to be on the go. I don't know. But for a game like Splatoon, I'm kind of ignoring it anyway, so it doesn't. I'm just interested in playing.
So,
Yeah, I guess.
so one of my,
No, go ahead.
one of my questions, and I guess I'll look this up later, is so it's just on mobile OSs, right? And it's on Android and iOS.
Yeah,
correct.
So there's nothing that would prevent you from using a different device, right? There's nothing that would prevent you from running it on a tablet.
No, there shouldn't be. No, as far as I know, yeah.
Yeah, so there might be some other options to utilize other devices than like your main phone. Because again, I agree with you. I don't like being forced to use my phone for a function. I'm still battery drain averse. I say in a week when Apple has killed the iPod, because I like using iPods and I don't like burning my phone battery. So yeah, I get you on the concern.
Yeah, and I maybe thought about what Sos was saying, trying to get that general, excuse me, that general audience, like the moms and the dads that might not actually be a gamer. So it might be a little easier for them to flip on their phone and do it that way, either for themselves or for their kid. So it makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I'll try it out. Hopefully, I'll try it out this week and see how it is. But other than that, yeah, I've been playing Zelda Breath of the Wild, and that's so far. I mean, it's a great game. I'm loving it. It looks beautiful. It plays great. There's little nuances like when you have your bow and arrow out, you can kind of just move the switch a little, so it's it's doing the gyroscope thing, and aiming. You can't just aim around, but as long as in general direction where you're looking, you can kind of aim at the enemy and stuff. So that's pretty cool. You can do that in Splatoon too, but that game just moves too fast that I can't use that function in it. So I just have to use the sticks.
My wife can't watch my children play Splatoon because of the gyro control.
So they use that control. I see. I can't play it with Splatoon.
My youngest, or one of my younger children, will play like the single player mode, and when they're a kid and they're trying to get it to turn, you do the thing where you turn your body
right.
to go. And with that game, with the gyroscope control, it's like it's vomit inducing almost sometimes. But yeah.
Yeah, and I know you can use the stick still kind of too. I think that just turns it right and left, and then you use the the gyroscope to look up and down and stuff. But it's just too much even for me now. So I'm getting too old. That's how I know I'm getting too old, when I can't use these things in these games. But in Breath of the Wild, it's cool. Like I said, you can only move it a little bit where you're looking, so it works fine for me there. Stamina little meter kind of gets on my nerves a little bit sometimes, but I'm trying to build that up, so hopefully I don't have that much problem with the stamina meter. But otherwise, I mean, it's a great game. I'm having fun with it. I finally got off the first main little section, which is the Great Plateau, and the world's pretty much open to me now. So I'm just running through that. And then other than that, I haven't played anything. Just Switch stuff. So hopefully looking to get some more games soon on that, so I can keep playing that, and so I'm not stagnant on this podcast on what I've been playing. But maybe I'll jump back to Xbox. But yeah, so that's it for me. How about you, Zeus? You've been playing some PS4 and PC stuff, looks like.
Yeah. So in my effort to grow and not stagnate, as you said, I once again tried to force myself, as Swiss I think challenged me a couple weeks ago. I tried to force myself to play another JRPG, and it failed. So I This gaming buyer's remorse this year. Too bad we did the episode of that, gaming purchase remorse a few weeks ago. So for my recent gaming purchase, I picked up Final Fantasy 12, the Zodiac Age, and I tried to stick with it, but I spent 50 minutes running around a dungeon level that was just flat, and you just kept running into kind of the same generic kind of enemy. I was really bothered by the fact that there's like a 20-minute opening cinematic, maybe 25 minutes. My daughter's screaming for me to come get her, and I'm like, in advance. I didn't try to advance to the cinematic, but I wanted to at least watch it. Probably because in the back of my head, I realized that this might be the only 25 minutes that I spend actually playing the game. But go through that whole opening cinematic, and then camera zooms in on your character, and where you start in the story has nothing whatsoever to do with any part of the cinematic that you sat there and watched through. And I'm like, what the heck is this? Like, why did I watch all that? Like, to not participate in that story. So,
you were playing Metal Gear? Sounds like Metal Gear.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so it was, and I like I said, I played it for about 50 minutes. I've tried to go back to it, but the problem is that the other thing in my playlist assigned to that platform, the PlayStation 4 for the week, was Destiny. Yeah, I just like Destiny. So I played a few minutes, like I said, about just a little less than an hour of Final Fantasy 12, and then I rolled over to Destiny, kind of to wash the bad taste of Final Fantasy out of my mouth. And I started, I was playing some of the, missions that I haven't played yet. Like I said, about a month, maybe 2 months ago, I finally did plunk down for the remaining, all the whole deal, all the DLC that I'd missed out on. And what really hooked me was, again, I had one of those great experiences like you have in Destiny, where there was just this set of unspoken cultural rules in that game where, we've talked how, Generation 7 was a thing on consoles, and it was this great big party at the beginning, especially on the 360, where the global gaming community kind of came together and to experience the wonder of Xbox Live. And then Call of Duty Modern Warfare ruined all of that, and all the monsters came out. But in this console generation, the PlayStation joined with a pretty robust multiplayer platform, but now everybody goes into parties and nobody talks in the public arenas anymore in games. Destiny is maybe the only game that I've found where that doesn't matter. Somehow this community has grown where there's just an expectation of teamwork when you go into and you go on a strike or a raid together. And even though you're not in voice comms, people respect each other. It's just when it goes well, and it doesn't go well all the time, but I find this weird statistic where 90% of the time it goes well. So I played both a raid and a strike. One of which was definitely from the DLC, and I hadn't completed it before. So it was pretty awesome. And just went in there and rolled with players. I think the first one I was with a level 30 and a level 34, and I'm a level 40 Titan now. And I think these were guys who had played the game through before already. I don't think these were new players, but they were probably just running new character classes or whatever. But it's one of the rare instances where I've gone into a match and had the senior character in the match as far as abilities and skill sets and weapons. And we all worked really well together, and it was great. The second one, the strike that I played, was really interesting because I got angry at the beginning because 3 of us dropped in to the strike. The first guy, I want to say it seemed like the first guy immediately disconnected because the 2 of us took off to go in. It was a classic one where you start outside and you traverse like within 2 minutes the first exterior part of the level immediately to go inside a cavern and start descending down. Well, before we even got in the cavern, like, this guy disconnected because I saw the little message that came up that said so-and-so departed. And I'm like, well, that's kind of being a jerk, right? Yeah, of course. Maybe he had a crying kid too, or something, or maybe the dog threw up somewhere, or whatever. So, but he took off, and it was just two of us. And the other guy, the two ways it kind of happens in Destiny, one, you all take off and stick together, and that's what happens most of the time, and it's wonderful. The other type, and this is a person I can't stand playing with because it's kind of what Rainbow Six Vegas became, was the people who speed run through the level and they just bypass all the opposition to get to the limited respawn area where they're taking on the boss. And I can't stand that because it's a game and I want to experience all the content that the developers put there for us. So I want to fight those smaller engagements building up to the boss. So, and this was, I guess, this was taking down Tanix, who was a warrior for Oryx, I think. And however I did it, I guess I somehow bypassed this mission and just went on to shortcut it on to taking down Oryx. So we were playing the strike, I think it was on the moon, and like I said, that guy rushed ahead, and I got really angry, and so I was fighting the smaller engagements on the way, and I was like, forget it, like, if he goes on without me, I don't care, but I wound up catching up to him, because after I fought, like, two small engagements, there actually wasn't anything in between me and where he was, and when I got there, there was a second guy there with him. So I don't know what happened in the strike matchmaking or whatever, but somehow three of us wound up back together. And again, just in the wonderful cinematic way things unfold in the game, they were already fighting a bunch of heavy enemies, including a tank. I think one of them had been taken down. It was the guy who started with me and had been running ahead of me. So I sprinted right into the combat scene where they were, and immediately took the risk to revive him. Withstanding a bunch of enemy fire that was coming in. So I kind of felt like on the other end, he must have been like, dude, mad respect, man. I left you behind. And so the first thing you did when you caught up with us was revive me, right? Or something. So we wound up sticking together and fighting through and taking down a Goliath tank and taking down a formidable enemy. The takedown on the enemy was really cool because one of the things I hate in Destiny is when in your effort to be heroic, because one of my things is when I show up and I'm the only Titan, I feel it's my job to go in and go toe-to-toe with big enemies, right? If I show up with a warlock and a hunter, I feel like, and we're having a hard time taking him down, I feel like one of my jobs is just to wade into the middle of the fire, right? and be a bullet sponge and distract the enemy while they try and take him down long range. So I'd run up on this guy, and he took me down, and one of the other guys came and revived me. I was really scared because he was kind of low on health, and I really hate when I rush in and get taken down, and there's 30 seconds before I can respawn, and in that time, I'm like, well, these other two guys are going to kill this guy before I can respawn, and I'm missing the last 30 seconds of the fight, and then I'm just going to come back, and it's going to be over. But which would have happened if one of these guys hadn't come in and revived me. So this guy came in and revived me. I charged the enemy again. I hit him with a shotgun and then punched him, and then he hit me with something and took me down immediately to the red zone. And I did a double jump and was going to just try and get away from him and go take cover. But at the last second, I spun back around in midair and hit him with a shotgun as I was descending and coming down from midair. And that was the last shot, and then he just crumbled. And I was like, that must have looked pretty damn heroic from one of the other guy's point of view. So it was a really great experience. And it's because of things like that I'm like, I want to try to experience JRPGs, but I'm like, that happened in 30 minutes of gameplay on Destiny. And I'm like, am I going to put my time into that kind of experience and have a big story to tell and something that sticks in my head? Or am I going to sit through an hour of dialogue running around two hallways in a dungeon fighting the same enemies over and over and over again? And yet, this is the other thing that killed me, and maybe I'm just programmed to a certain type of gameplay. That's maybe cheap and too easily rewarding is what I'm sure some people would contend. I'm like, as you're fighting those enemies, none of them are dropping loot. You're not getting any new abilities or any new weapons, right? It's a very sterile feeling experience. And so this year I've bought Kingdom Hearts, and I bought the Kingdom Hearts remake, Kingdom Hearts 2 EX or whatever, plus something or other, is this real big remake package.
Yeah, I think there's like 2 or 3 games in there, wasn't there? Or
right. Yeah, yeah, and I tried playing that and I fell asleep, during part of the gameplay. And then I tried this, and I'm like, I think I'm done. Right? I think I've nailed why I don't like it. Um, it's not quickly rewarding enough, and it doesn't hook you. And I feel like they demand you to work to get something out of the game, and we all know I don't like that. Right? I can gamify the heck out of little sub pieces of the game, but those games don't give me anything to gamify, right? So that was my big gaming sink this week. I also played some Quake 4 and Max Payne on the PC. That was mainly just to do some gameplay testing with with a mouse that I had for hardware review called the TechNet Alpha M006 wireless mobile gaming mouse. That review is up on Gearworks.com, which you can see in my lower third right there. So you can go check that video out. So I didn't really play those. I just played them for some game test time. So that's it. So Swiss, tell me that you had a better time playing some JRPG than I did. Or Prime, did you have a question before we roll over?
No, I was just gonna say I think that is that Kingdom Hearts HD 1.5 remix.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Which, like you said, has like 3 games packed in with it.
Yeah, final mix, Chain of Memories, and 350 and a half 2 days or whatever. I don't know how you would say that.
Right.
Those are the games. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, I did stagnate this week. I didn't have as much time to play, so I only played Batman Arkham Asylum. I continued that, and I'm getting closer to the end with that game. Still enjoying it. Still regretting that I left it on my shelf for so long. I was at one of the.
Is that the first game in that franchise?
It is. It is. So I fought a boss recently, and I was able to climb up on the back, and it was like the Twin Titans at one point. The Joker and I kind of accidentally got on the guy's back, and I was like, whoa. And then I realized I was controlling him as he's stumbling around, and you can use him to bash the other Titan. So that was fun to see. And that was one of it's been a while, I think, since I've been fighting a boss where I got surprised like that. Metal Gear Solid, it would happen all the time. I absolutely love the boss battles in that game, and always anytime somebody asks about your favorite fights like that, it always comes down to Psycho Mantis and whatnot. But so that was, it's not Metal Gear Solid level, but I enjoyed it. As far as I haven't had a lot of time to play games this week. But as far as Zeus with the JRPGs, I've beaten Final Fantasy 12. But as I saw it in the rundown and I was thinking about some questions I would ask you, I realized I can't remember very much from the game, and I don't even remember the main character's name. So it kind of, I am not surprised that you have had that experience, because the story has to really drive a game like that. You have to care about the characters, and then the battle system has to be somewhat enjoyable as you're going through waves and waves and waves and waves of enemies. So building up your characters. But I don't remember much from the game. The most I remember is when I was grinding at one point on this island fighting a bunch of T-Rexes. That was when I bought my first plasma TV, and I remember thinking my PS2 looked like crap on the plasma TV. And that was when I went through having to see if I could figure out, buying better AV equipment. That's what I remember about Final Fantasy 12. My AV equipment for PS2. So maybe that's not the best one to try to jump back in there. But I'm looking forward to picking up Final Fantasy 15 at some point. So maybe we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I will say, Final Fantasy Tactics was a wonderful game, and I really liked that. And what was the other one?
You should try Valkyria Chronicles too. I enjoyed that one a lot.
Yeah, I played that a little. I think I played the demo of that on the Xbox 360, I don't know, but yeah, I did enjoy that as well. Um, and I like the bouncer, which is a surprising thing to say, but that was a Square Enix PlayStation 2 game, which I love. Final Fantasy 12. One of the things I really don't like about it is the combat system, and this is, I guess, one of my things that I've come to understand about the Final Fantasy franchise because I haven't played a ton of the titles, but I guess one of the shticks of that franchise is that they kind of come at the combat system differently for every single game, with a couple of exceptions where they have actually repeated the system. So one of the things I can't stand is you select an enemy to target for attack actions, but then they kind of simulate this faux turn-based thing. So what winds up happening is you say, "Hey, I want to attack that guy," um, and you run up to them, and hopefully you attack them like within a millisecond of arriving within range. But then your character just stands there and like bobs and weaves, like doing nothing, until they can take their next action. But in between, you can move, like. And again, I grew up with pen and paper RPGs, right, where you get a certain movement budget to expend each turn, and the same thing, you get a certain attack budget to expend each turn. So it's different, right? In Knights of the Old Republic, you would move, you would expend your budget, and then you would have your attack. So that makes sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me to initiate an attack, have to wait, but in the between, you can run around all over the board, which means when it's your time to attack, you may not even be next to it's a bad combat system.
They've been trying to get more real time in the more recent editions. I skipped 13 entirely. I haven't played a lot of the recent ones, but yeah, I can understand that criticism.
Yeah, I think I've got to give this some thought. I think I'm going to go through my gaming libraries, at least on consoles, and I think I'm going to delete and get rid of every game that I've tried to play, give it an honest try to play, and have just determined that it's not just me, and get rid of them and replace them with something that's in my wheelhouse.
Well, it should be fun. This isn't a job.
Yeah, it's true. So is the combat in that game, is it real time, or is it you gotta you choose attack or defend or whatever?
It's some
pseudo. Yeah, it's
like a mix.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, back in the day, Final Fantasy you had a little time meter. It was turn based. Your character, right. You could wait a second. Okay, now I can do something. Now I can do something. Now I can do something. And then Final Fantasy X was still like that. They did have it where you could kind of see the turn order coming up in the side on Final Fantasy X, but yeah, Final Fantasy 12 was a step, because I don't even think in Final Fantasy X you couldn't move them around the battlefield. So I think that was the jump in Final Fantasy 12. 11 I think was the MMORPG, their first go around with that, but that was the big thing for 12. And like I said, I don't remember much from it, so it mustn't have had an impact.
You loved it that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing, the thing I'm really sad about, right, is the other option I had for purchasing was Elite Dangerous, right?
Oh.
And I imposed one of my goofy rules where it was like, well, that came out more than 30 days ago, so it's not as great for creating video content or talking about on the podcast, so I went with Final Fantasy. So I think I'm going to rectify that particular choice.
I'm sorry, Zeus. I led you astray.
Yeah, I blame Zeus.
Was that a digital purchase of Final Fantasy?
It was, so I'm not going to get my money back.
Oh, okay, yeah, you can't. So I was say you could trade it in or something. That's right.
But I may be able to fool myself out of feeling remorseful if I just can't see that I made the mistake in my gaming library.
I do that a lot with the free games because at least it's free. So I was like, I don't like this. I'll just uninstall it. But that's all right. That's cool. Well, you tried it at least, so that's all you can do.
There's growth here.
That's right. Baby steps. All right. So, so if that's, I believe that's it for you, Swiss. You just had the one. So I think we'll call this a night here on episode number 7. Any last words or plugs for anything?
Yeah, the only thing I need to do is I need to quickly run down the results of the giveaway.
Okay. Yep. Go ahead.
So once again, if you're not familiar, we did do a giveaway last week. It was the Enough to Keep Going Holiday Xbox One Primer giveaway on the E2KG network. We will hopefully be doing these in the future. So stay tuned. But we did a giveaway of the I gotta actually look at it because the name is so long. The of an Xbox One wireless controller Dawn Shadow Special Edition. So this is kind of a purple and black edition from the Design Lab. That's pre-configured. So it was an Amazon giveaway. We had 917 people participate in the poll. This poll around last week's topic, the Zero HUD design in games, and the option for Zero HUD design in games is the way of the future, definitely not the way of the future, okay, but not for Sims. HUDs should be done in augmented reality or needs to be done with a midway compromise. So overwhelmingly, the votes were 65% for Zero HUD design is the way of the future. It is okay, but not for Sims, and needs a midway compromise, tied for second at 13%. Definitely not the way of the future came in third at fourth, however you want to say it when there's a tie. 6% for definitely not the way of the future, and HUD should be done in augmented reality came in dead last. So great participation in the poll. I will say I'm pretty sure the link got out, so that is a thing that can be done with Amazon giveaways. People can grab the link and share it out. Maybe I made the mistake wanting to get the poll out to people as quickly as possible and not wait on me to video edit last week's episode. So for one night, I had it in the comments on the original archive of the episode until I had a chance to video edit it when I embedded it in the subtitles or captions. Which I will probably not make that mistake. So a lot more people participated who were probably not actual audience members, so that's a shame. I hope that the person who won at least has watched one episode of the show. But the winner was Igor. That also makes me a little sketchy that it's not like a person's real name. But on Amazon, you can use your Amazon comments. Can be a pseudonym or like a call sign, like our gamer tags. It doesn't have to be your real name. So that's what I do for Amazon feedback and comments. When I do reviews on Amazon, I use my gamer tag. I don't reveal my real name. But that's fine. So somebody won. There's a lot of participation in the poll. There's valuable data reflecting our conversation from last week. So we do appreciate it. And keep your eyes out for the future. I will say for future giveaways, I am going to require you to watch the video. At least for a small amount of time. But thanks very much for everybody who participated. Thanks for giving us the data and the feedback. Thanks for participating in the conversation, whether you were able to grab the link without coming through the YouTube channel or not. That's fine. It's all fair. There's no laws against it, so we do appreciate it. Keep your ears tuned for future giveaways on the E2KG network.
Nice. Yep. Congratulations to Igor, whether that's your real name or not. So if you did enjoy this episode or other episodes on our podcast here, please like and subscribe and share with your friends and family. Check out the other shows on our E2KG network. We got the Dark Matters, Dark Hypothesis podcast. We have the E2KG in 30, which is our Thursday night show where we do go over our news articles of the week. And that's it for now, actually. But maybe more in the future. We'll see. So on behalf of my co-hosts here, Zeus Adamus and Swiss Guard, and myself, Osiris Prime, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.
This has been a production of the E2KG network, virtualizing the water cooler one podcast at a time.